This video, I'm going to install the S9120BL high voltage Metal Gear servo. This is before the servo install. With the old servo, you can see it has a little bit of struggle to turn left and right when you put some pressure on the vehicle. I get started by taking off the little engine cover and the servo screws. Flip it over and take off the drag link. This had Loctite on it, so it might be a little bit more difficult to remove. After that, you should be able to just take the servo right on out. You kind of got to fish out the servo with the horn on it if you keep the horn on before you take it out. The servo horn is also Loctited in place, so it may be a little more difficult to take out. Here's the two servos side by side. You can see the original is actually quite a bit bigger box than the new one, the high torque one. The high torque one is a little bit smaller, but the decks are actually at different levels. So we're going to have to address that further on. Do note that the new wires are kind of short. Color-wise, this one seems to plug in backwards, which I figured out. But I'm plugging it in because I got to reset the servo so that it's centered for when I put the horn on. And here I'm powering on the vehicle and turning left and right to get the servo to return to a neutral position. Removing the old bracket and putting the new bracket that was actually included with the original truck to fit the new servo, and then fitting on the servo horn. For me, the servo horn just slid right on without any modifications. So using Loctite, I put the servo horn and attached it back with the screw. So I've determined that if I want to get the spacing done correctly, to get these matched up, because you can see that when I line up the plates, the actual gear here is almost a whole head shorter than this one. So I'm going to lift this one up. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take a longer screw. I'm going to put it into the servo, and then I'm going to use this nut as a spacer with a washer. Probably a washer on each side. And that'll give me about the same height as the old one. It's kind of maybe not the best way to do it, but it's definitely gonna work for now. Hopefully there's not too much torque on the frame that holds the servo once I do that, but we'll find out. Here I'm just fitting the nuts onto the screws before I put them onto the servo. They can slide right into the servo from the side because the holes are open on each side. With the screws now locked to the servo via a nut, I had to do each screw a little bit at a time so that the servo was going in level. Because if you did one side too much, it would force one side down and it would make it crooked. So just a little bit at a time. It's like almost like torquing a tire onto a car. You do little bits at a time. And this is what it looks like with the spacers in there. And this is the back side with the new bracket and the spacers. It comes with this little packet, which I think those are spacers, but those are rubber, and they didn't seem too firm. Flipped it back over and reattached the drag link with some Loctite to make sure that that screw doesn't come out. This is what it looks like after. Pretty much looks stock. And this is the truck on the ground with the new servo. Testing it out. You know, there's no pressure right here, but it seems to be turning fine left and right. And I add some pressure, and it definitely seemed like it had a lot less resistance now with the new servo turning left and right when I'm putting pressure on it. You know, before it was almost kind of a chunky movement, whereas this is now a smooth movement with the tires on the ground with some pressure. One thing to note is that after this servo install, the steering was backwards, but the Spectrum DX3 allows you to reverse that right on the remote, so I was able to just reverse that polarity, and now the steering is correct. So no video is really going to give you the full feeling of what changing this servo really does. I mean, the last one was just starting to get weak, and you could tell that it was having trouble even when you're just driving on pavement doing circles. The circles were not very tight. They were kind of wide, and I could tell that it was struggling a little bit. And I'm sure that you can still play with the endpoints of the servo a little bit and maybe get some more turning out of it. But I wanted to give it a shot and put in this new servo and see how it does. It really does seem to push the Honcho left and right quite a bit more than the old servo, so I'm happy with that. This isn't the high-speed servo, so the turning time is not amazing. Like, you wouldn't use this for a high-speed application, but with rock crawling being relatively slow, you don't really need that type of speed. You really do need the torque though. But when you have high torque, that's when you start to break other things, link ends and things like that. I didn't have anything break today, but it was good to just take it out and watch the new servo at work. I definitely think there was a difference. Like I said, that's kind of hard to justify in a video other than when you put pressure on the vehicle and turn left and right. This is a plug-and-play servo too, essentially. I mean, you plug it in, it's ready to go. You don't need any sort of inline battery connectors or anything like that, so it's definitely not the highest voltage going to the servo. But it seemed to do fine for my application. Like, I don't really need to go in line with the battery. Like, that seems a bit overkill for what I'm doing. But maybe in time I'll look at that as well. But for right now, it seems to be doing what I want it to do. Since this truck isn't very old, I'm pretty sure Horizon Hobby would have sent out a replacement servo for the one that was acting up, but I really wanted to increase the amount of torque I had, get a better ride. You could tell it's kind of underpowered from the factory, so instead of getting that replacement, I just decided to buy this. This isn't the cheapest. I think it was over $200 just for the servo, so it's not a cheap upgrade by any means. Is it worth it? I'm not sure. I mean, if your servo seems to be hanging in there, then maybe you wouldn't need this. It may not be worth the extra $200 or so for such a, large-scale servo replacement. Here I'm just showing full lock left, full lock right, kind of going back and forth to show you what it looks like with this servo and the default endpoint set on the vehicle. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a relatively easy install. Helps if you kind of read up and kind of know what you're doing. There's definitely videos available to get further in depth on the install. But yeah, just cool install, cool upgrade. And I'll be getting some more footage with it. I'll probably be replacing my tires soon because they're getting a little velvety feeling and they don't really have a ton of traction. But I've got some Hyrax G8s ready to go, so we'll be putting those on soon.